With Sasha at the midpoint of her trip, that left me with 2.5 weeks to get from Southern California to Chicago to pick her up at the airport. In this episode, I'll take you through Yosemite and Death Valley National Parks. I'll show you some of my favorite boondocking spots. I spent most of my time camped out in the desert and trying to stay cool, going on walks and watching sunsets. The rest of the time I spent driving. It was during these final weeks that some strong feelings of loneliness started to creep in. I was really looking forward to seeing Sasha again. In the last episode, I finished off with a visit to Sequoia National Park. Now, I'm passing through Yosemite National Park. This tunnel at the entrance of Yosemite was a little too tight for comfort, but I made it by hugging the yellow line. My goal for the day was to hike to the base of Bridal Veil Falls. Unfortunately, the entire area was closed for restoration. I decided to go for a walk to see how close I could get. And this is as far as I made it. Sasha really wanted to see this park with me, so I decided not to explore too much. But it really is spectacular. There's waterfalls in every direction and beautiful mountain streams. As inviting as it may look, the water was still in the 30s. I dipped my feet in for a few seconds, until they turned numb. I made my way around the valley and started to head towards the exit. I had gained a couple thousand feet in elevation, and was hoping to have an overview of the entire valley. And I wasn't disappointed. The weather was nearly perfect. I couldn't have asked for a better day to visit the park. And now with that behind me, I had one more tunnel to pass through before I could exit the park. Look at this, we have a pretty big dust devil. Started off kind of as a giant ball of dust, and now it has turned into what looks to be about 1,000-foot high tornado. It's kind of died down now, but it was pretty cool to watch it form. Without too many options in the area, I ended up at a parking lot that I found on iOverlander, and it was beautiful. It was nestled in the mountains and had a beautiful view of this lake. Before the sunset, I wanted to go for a quick walk. I don't normally like staying in parking lots like this. I'd much rather be out in the wilderness. However, this was an exception, and I'd gladly stay here again. My next destination is Death Valley, but first, I have to make my way around the Sierra Nevada mountains. Since most of the mountain passes are closed, I had to get a little bit creative. So I left Yosemite and started to head north along the mountains. That brought me up to Highway 88, which headed east over the mountains towards Lake Tahoe. At that point, it was getting late and I needed to get some supplies. So I headed towards Carson City, where I found some BLM land to camp on. The next morning, I gathered some supplies in town and headed south towards Death Valley. It's a long drive. Highway 395 seems to be the most direct route to Death Valley, or possibly the only route. Twisting, winding, through the mountains, lakes and rivers everywhere. These are some of the prettiest highways I've seen. About halfway, I stopped near Mono Lake at a roadside vista point, and wow, was it beautiful. Just a few miles past Mono Lake, I ran into these heavy haulers. They weren't exactly what I was expecting to see in the middle of nowhere. Does anyone know what these tanks are? Let me know down in the comments. Since it was getting late, I needed to find a place to camp that was free and had cell service. I had had several people tell me that I should check out Alabama Hills, so that's where I'm headed now. As I got closer to Alabama Hills, I could see some smoke in the distance. The closer I got, the bigger the smoke got. Until finally I was in the smoke. That's when I realized it was a wildfire. I'd never really come across one before. Alabama Hills is a network of roads and campsites. It's all free, which is great, if you can find a spot. It took me about an hour to find one, at which point I realized that I had looped all the way around and I was facing the wildfire. I could smell the smoke. Of course, I was a little bit concerned that it might spread in my direction. These are the places and experiences that really had me missing Sasha. I never get tired of the wide open expanses out west, and this place was no exception. Such a beautiful sunset. But it feels so empty watching it alone. I kept checking on the firefighting efforts in the distance, using a little tiny telescope that we carry with us. I could tell they were getting it under control, and by midnight it was completely out, which made it much easier to sleep through the night. I stayed in the area for about 3 days and moved around a couple times to get better cell service. I can't wait to go back sometime with Sasha. The scenery is incredible, but it's time for me to move on. So I'm making my way towards Death Valley and I'm driving through the Alabama Hills here. And this is kind of the central area. Crazy rock formations, mountains in the distance. I definitely can't wait to come back here. It's beautiful. I had kept hearing about a place called Star Wars Canyon and decided to make a quick stop. I had no idea what to expect. I found out later that it was a canyon where they had filmed some scenes from Star Wars. It was pretty cool looking. Lots of different colors, and a beautiful panoramic view overlooking the entrance to Death Valley in the distance. After a short stop, I continued on my way to Death Valley. I have to say, this is one of my favorite roads I've ever driven. We've been all over the country, and I find this area to be the most fun to drive. You just have to keep an eye on the weather. Death Valley is huge, and there's so much to see. One of my favorite things is simply driving around all of the incredible roads. There's a lot to see and do in this park, but I wasn't feeling overly motivated to do it alone. It'll have to wait until Sasha comes back and we can go and do it together. I visited several easy-to-access attractions, but then the weather started to change. The sky grew dark and the wind started to pick up. I've learned that the weather in the deserts can change very quickly, and I decided to call it a day. I headed back the way I came in. I felt safer doing that since I knew where I was going. The wind really picked up and it started to rain. After about 15 minutes of driving, the clouds started to clear and the sun started to come back out. This was the perfect recipe for a glorious sunset. I don't really know what to say, but this is absolutely spectacular. Mountains in the distance with the snow. You have Death Valley with the dry lake bed. All the mountains, the sun setting, the clouds, the blue skies, all mixed together. I spent a while enjoying the sunset, and then headed off to find a place to camp. It was getting dark. I don't like hunting for boondock spots in the dark, but at this point my options were limited. I had to drive back through Death Valley tomorrow anyway, so I didn't want to drive too far away. This place was a few hundred feet off the highway, and it seemed perfect for the night. The next morning I was greeted by some snow, which I don't see very often anymore since Sasha and I try to stay in the warmer climates. My goal for the day was to pass back through Death Valley and then find some camping in Pahrump, Nevada. Sasha and I had stayed there a couple months before, so I knew I could find some good cell service so I could get some work done. What I didn't know is that I was going to find what might be my favorite boondock spot of all time. It's just a dusty spot in the desert, but it's so rare to find a place like this, all to myself without any other campers. No rangers checking in, no noisy trucks driving by, just pure, quiet solitude. And great cell service. The third day is when I started to feel uncomfortably alone and longing for some social interaction. In the next episode, I'll visit with some friends along the road from Nevada to Chicago. I'll stop in Bryce Canyon, Utah, Colorado, and spend a few days in Illinois waiting for Sasha's plane to arrive, where I discover a really interesting place to camp and ride my bike. We'll welcome Sasha back and hear about her final days in Russia. And I'll share my true thoughts about my month of wifeless wandering. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.